Good evening, dear listener. Tonight we journey back not with urgency or purpose, but with soft footsteps and slow breath into the dim folds of history. If your limbs are weary and your thoughts feel waterlogged with the noise of waking life, you're in the right place. A summer wind flaps the linen curtain beside the open doorway, and you are sitting ineasily on a low, creaking chair with one leg shorter than the others. His hands are stained the same rust color as old nails, and he's whistling quietly through cracked teeth as he sharpens a blade that curves like a fishing hook. You stretch it forward, carefully wincing as the joint pulses beneath the skin. A woman's voice follows, low and chanting. Perhaps a hymn, perhaps only breath. The barber surgeon begins without ceremony. No explanation, no counting down. The first slice is small but shocking. Some claim it was rare save for the gravely injured, the noble, the soldier freshly wounded. Others insist it was everyday, ordinary, even mundane. Procedures weren't done in pristine chambers, but in kitchens, inns, or open fields. A boil might be lanced beside the hearth, a broken bone set beside the ale. The evidence is scattered in marginalia, in letters, in bones scraped clean and marked by knives. Whatever the truth, one thing is certain. If you're lucky enough to survive, you will be celebrated. In towns like this, a recovery is a miracle. People whisper your name. Children stare at your scar. The man who cuts you may even be bought a drink. He is not just a barber, he is a magician with iron and cloth. But if the cut goes too deep, if the wound darkens, if the fever comes, you are a lesson instead. A cautionary tale. The pain does not roar at blooms, slow and wide, filling your leg like dye in water. The stick falls from your mouth, teeth marks deep in the grain. You're shivering. Not from cold, but from something older pains echo. The barber nods once and steps back. No smile, no words, just the quiet satisfaction of another job done. You sit there, spine curled, sweat drying in patches, trying not to think about what lives beneath the bandage. The apprentice begins to sweep. The blade is set aside. Outside, the sun is lower now, pale and peach-colored through the dirty glass. The heat has not left it, presses against your skin, close and sour. Somewhere, someone laughs. A cart rumbles past. Life continues. You are not dead. Not yet. It's more than many can say. Your mouth clamps hard on the stick, the wood pressing against your molars, the taste of old spit and dust crawling across your tongue. His apprentice hovers behind him, a boy no older than 14, pale and blinking. He holds a strip of cloth soaked in what smells like wine and urine. This, you realize, is cleanliness. He dabs at your wound. It stings like betrayal. You squeeze the chair arms, breath shallow, mind scattering. There is no numbing. There is no pause. Only the deliberate work of the blade and the soft sound of flesh yielding. The flesh is already turning purple, and you think perhaps wishfully that it might be just a sprain. He presses down with a thumb the size of a wine cork, nods solemnly, and mutters something in Latin. Maybe a prayer, maybe a joke. Then he reaches for a tray of iron tools, some curved like claws, others blunt and bulbous like blacksmith's punches. There are no gloves, no alcohol, nothing that gleams clean. The blades are sharpened but not polished. You wonder what else they've cut today. A pig, a boil, a man's jaw. You don't ask. You don't want the answer. He hands you a thick wooden stick, its edges chewed soft by 100 mouths before yours. Bite, he says. And that is your anesthesia. Behind him, a table rests beneath a narrow window, cluttered with bowls of cloudy water, linen strips stiff with dried fluid, metal instruments that look more suited for carving meat than mending flesh. Not trained, not certified, such things didn't exist, but skilled by sheer repetition. Knowledge passed from bloodied hand to bloodied hand. Your barber may have learned on the battlefield, slicing arrows from soldiers with trembling speed. Or maybe he watched someone once and decided he could do it too. In this age, regulation is a whisper. Licensing is a myth. Your fate depends entirely on the steadiness of his hand and the mood of the gods. Infection waits like a hungry dog just outside the threshold.
Ow!
You can feel it in the air, thick and heavy. Open wounds are invitations. Pus, a guest, antiseptic, just wine, maybe vinegar, maybe fire. He'll seal you with hot oil if need be. A hiss, a scream, a scar. This is not healing. This is survival through ritual and grit. There is no fire here, no warmth. Just the sharp scent of resin and the oily smoke of tallow candles dripping onto a dirt floor. On the wall, a red and white striped pole leans against the plaster. It once marked his shop as a place of haircuts and healing, if you can call it that. The red stands for blood, the white for bandages. Literal signs of a man who can trim your beard in the morning and remove a limb by lunch. The room is quiet except for the occasional murmur of footsteps outside. Someone passes, slows, peers in. A small audience, perhaps. In this world, medicine is public theater, and your pain is the main event. Every time you breathe, it shifts under you with a sound like splintering teeth. Your ankle throbs. Not sharply, not yet. Just a dull, rhythmic blooming that pulses through your calf like someone tapping the inside of your bone. You'd fallen earlier that day, slipping from a creaky ox cart while unloading sacks of grain. The swelling came on quickly, hot and sudden. Your neighbor swore by the barber. You'd expected a warm towel, perhaps a small trim, a quiet touch to ease the pain. Instead, you were brought here to a smoky little room where the ceiling bends low and the air smells of blood, lye, and iron. Let them drift now, your worries, your weight tinned to the hush between heartbeats. Let the world grow muffled and strange around you. A low hum of candlelight and the brittle scent of old wood welcomes you in. The year is somewhere between plague and peace. You don't know the number, but the air tastes of ash and vinegar. The man before you wears a soiled apron that was once white. He does not ask for your name, only your foot. Outside, someone coughs a deep, rattling sound like gravel in a sack. Here's something strange. Some of these barber surgeons were gifted. There is a peculiar debate among modern historians. How common was surgery for the average medieval soul? The cut is finished now. Your foot is swaddled in cloth that was once white but now seeps a slow, syrupy red. The heat deepens by late afternoon, slipping into the room like a slow exhale from the earth itself. The smell of boiled cloth lingers in the rafters, lined and dunked in wine. Left to dry, then reused again and again, until it becomes stiff as bark and sweet with rot. Another patient has been dragged in, a man with a swollen arm wrapped in a blood-specked tunic. You watch, transfixed and horrified, as the knife splits skin like ripened fruit. The smell is indescribable flesh, yes, but more than that. It's your own body turned against itself, smoke rising from skin as if purging something unspeakable. His hands, though crude, recognize rot. They know which tissue resists and which surrenders. His bandage glows pale in the candlelight, crusted with blood, shadowed with yellow. He drinks wine from a cracked cup and doesn't speak. The apprentice hums again, this time a different tune, higher, almost sweet. He's rinsing tools in a basin of tepid water. No soap, just motion. He wipes the saw, dries it on his sleeve, and hangs it back on the hook beside the wall. The smell of rust hangs faint in the air. You wonder if it remembers the blood of the last man it bit. The tools sleep now, but they will be hungry again tomorrow. Outside, a dog howled, sharp, distant, then gone. You lie back on your cot and stare at the beams overhead, tracking the flicker of candlelight as it dances like a memory you're trying not to keep. There is knowledge in the body, passed not through books, but through years of blood-soaked linen. It's quieter now, but not better like coals after the flame has passed. You swing your legs over the side of the cot, your hands trembling slightly. The floor is cold, dusty. Someone has left a pail of water nearby. You look inside. The surface is cloudy with specks of ash. No matter. You use it to splash your face, the cold biting enough to feel real. The apprentice arrives not long after, carrying a small jar of thick green paste. He says it's for the wound honey wine and crushed herbs. It smells of garlic and old rosemary. He applies it gently, with fingers that tremble less than before. You flinch, but not enough to stop him. Good, he whispers. Still hurts. That's good. His tools aren't clean, but they are arranged with care. The bone saw lies parallel to the knife, the forceps resting on folded cloth. The ritual is ancient, a rhythm older than germ theory. And yet here's the reflective truth. Without antiseptic, without anesthesia, Every operation is an act of faith. Not just in the healer, but in your own body's willingness to survive the violence done to it. Sometimes faith is all there is. The man doesn't scream. He's gone somewhere else, hands twitching, maybe unconscious, maybe beyond that. The surgeon mutters a few words, perhaps to the apprentice, perhaps to no one. The wound is wrapped quickly in wool, soaked with vinegar, and bound with linen ties. The surgeon steps back, wipes his hands on his apron, and walks away. The apprentice stays, mopping the blood with rags that leak more than they clean. You exhale, not realizing you'd been holding your breath. You're next, you think. Not today, maybe. But eventually, the muscle tears wetly beneath. The saw is next short, rough strokes, back and forth, bone giving way with a crunch like snapping kindling. The more effective the cure. Pain, they said, purified. In that sense, suffering was not a side effect, it was the treatment. The less you screamed, the more dangerously ill you were. Some even used lack of pain as a diagnostic tool. If the knife found no protest, they'd cut deeper. Your nerve endings then became a kind of chart. You imagine your foot under that saw, how far they would go before they found your scream. It is not an idle thought. The swelling hasn't gone down. You haven't walked in 2 days. The cloth binding your foot grows damp too quickly. Infection smells a certain way, and you're beginning to know it. The smell changes. It's thick now, like hot metal and old onions. You gag quietly, turning your face to the wall, but your ears won't obey. You hear everything, the hiss of breath, the slap of blood on stone, the groan that trails off into a low animal whimper. This is surgery, and it is happening not in a hall of medicine, but here on a wooden board, under flies, beside a man like you. When it ends, the limb drops into a pale wooden bucket already holding someone else's foot. His face is gray, eyes glassy with heat or fever. The limb itself is monstrous, puffed like dough, fingers blackening at the tips. He moans softly with each breath, as though life has become a rhythm of suffering. The surgeon enters behind him, sleeves rolled high, apron newly stained from some earlier affair. He doesn't speak, doesn't reassure. There is no bedside manner in this place, only efficiency. The tools are laid out again: forceps, saw, hook, knife, the same instruments from before. You recognize them now. You know what they do? The apprentice sets a stick between the man's teeth and holds his good arm still. The surgeon nods. Procedure begins. Somewhere beneath your cot, a beetle crawls over straw. You hear it before you see it, a gentle ticking like fingertips against parchment. You haven't moved much. Your foot, now wrapped in coarse wool, throbs with a steady pulse. Every beat feels warm and wet. You don't know if it's healing or festering. The boundary between the two is thin here. The surgeon's apprentice bell, soft-faced and no older than 16, kneels at the corner of the room, sharpening blades with a whetstone and humming a tuneless song. His hands are too clean. That won't last. You're no longer alone in the room. It's a performance in a way. It's not one with applause, but with a kind of sacred silence. Cauterization follows. A red-hot iron rod pulled from the fire and pressed against the open stump with a hiss. There is a strange fact you once overheard from a passing friar. Some barbers believe that the more pain endured by a patient— curious, isn't it? The surgeon may not know about bacteria, but he knows when something is wrong. Later that night, the man with the missing arm stirs beside you. By morning, the cloth around your foot has stiffened. The pain has changed again. At sunset, the light slants through the crooked wooden shutters in narrow gold bars, catching dust in midair like frozen rain. You're back on the cot, and your whole leg now feels heavier than it did this morning. You don't feel reassured. The room is quieter now, not peaceful, just emptied of its earlier chaos. He's barefoot now, his apron soaked at the hem, a faint line of ash beneath one eye. They call it laudable. A sign your body is pushing out the bad. Others say it's death in liquid form. The difference, it seems, is how it smells, or whether the patient screams when you touch it. Yours does both. The surgeon applies a hot compressed linen soaked in garlic wine and pressed down with firm hands. Your heel, when pressed, gives nothing back. You dream of something crawling beneath your skin, eating its way toward your knee. In the dream, your foot is speaking to you. It says, "Let me go." You wake up covered in sweat. The wound throbs. You hear chanting from the chapel. Someone died in the night. You're not sure if it was in the ward or if it was almost you. A nun stops at your cot and touches your forehead with a cloth soaked in lavender. She doesn't speak. You almost cry, not from pain, from relief. It's been days since anyone touched you without a blade. The knife slices easily and you feel pressure, not pain. This is bad. They cut until you feel something until the edge of the blade scrapes living tissue, then the whine again, then the wrapping. You bleed through the cloth, but not fast, just steadily. It's like something draining that doesn't plan to stop. The surgeon pats your shoulder and says something short in Latin. You think it's a blessing? It might be a farewell. The apprentice offers you broth, barely warm, mostly water. You drink it anyway, letting the heat pool behind your teeth. You almost scream. Almost. The cot creaks. The apprentice holds your shoulder. You swallow the sound, and the room goes quiet again. Somewhere beyond the walls, a bell tolls softly. Evening prayers. No one here stops to pray. Your body is the only ritual happening now, and it's not clear if it's sacred or already past saving. He doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. His eyes read your leg like a page. The pulse in your leg no longer syncs with your heartbeat. The pus has hardened at the edges like wax. When they peel it back, you bite the inside of your cheek until you feel something pop. You don't cry. You don't flinch. You just breathe through your nose and try not to look at the exposed flesh beneath. The surgeon says the infection hasn't reached the bone yet, but the flesh around the heel is dying. He suggests they cut it away. You don't argue, not because you agree, because you no longer have the energy to care. If it must be cut, then let it be cut. Maybe they'll leave enough of you behind to stand on. It's faster, fevered, like it's trying to escape. You stare at the ceiling, tracing a crack that runs like a river between the beams. You hear the man beside you, coughing now, wet thick. You count the seconds between coughs, but you don't know why. The room smells of vinegar and sweat, blood and old wool. You want water, but your mouth tastes like cloth and ash. You close your eyes and drift for a moment. Not sleep, just weightlessness. It's like floating between one pain and the next, and the verdict comes with a single grunt. He gestures for wine. The apprentice fetches a chipped bottle. They pour it over the wound. You jolt at the sting, bright, sharp, electric. You taste blood again. The surgeon nods once and presses down around the edge of the swelling. More pus seeps out, thick and pale. He leans in, sniffs, then pulls back with a wince. You recognize that look? You've seen it on farmers, when they lift the wrong side of a sack of rotting grain. The surgeon murmurs to the apprentice. Catch only a few words. Rot, watch, not yet, not yet. That means it's close. The man with the amputated arm lies asleep nearby, mouth open, breathing shallow and dry. Flies hum at the windows. Somewhere a dog barks without conviction. The apprentice kneels beside your foot and begins unwrapping the cloth. The first layer peels back with a sound like old parchment. The second one sticks. You feel it tear, and you bite your lip until it bleeds. The smell intensifies. It's thick, meaty wrong. Beneath the linen, the skin has turned a mottled color grayish yellow near the toes, greenish toward the heel. There's pus, a lot of it. The apprentice says nothing. The paste they smeared over the wound has dried into a thick crust, and the bandages stick to it, faintly warm, faintly sour. Something isn't right. You know it, the way animals know storms. Pain hasn't sharpened, it's grown deeper, quieter, but more dangerous. Your calf pulses with heat. Your stomach turns at the smell rising from the cloth. You shift to look, but the wrapping clings, and the skin underneath itches in a way that feels wet. Not a good sign. You exhale slowly, and your breath smells faintly of copper. You don't know why. You don't ask. The apprentice returns with a lantern and a crooked wooden tray. He doesn't smile, just nods. He says the surgeon will check the wound tonight. The surgeon arrives not long after. There's a debated theory in the monastery about wounds. Some monks say pus is good. They leave you alone for a while. The cot is damp beneath you, the bandage now cresting into your skin again. They wake you with another cloth change. This one sticks worse than before. Here's a curiosity. Some surgeons use pain as diagnosis. The deader the flesh, the less it screamed. That night, your fever rises. See strange shapes behind your eyes. The ceiling breathes. The walls hum. At dawn, the ward stirs with a low, rustling murmured prayers, rattling spoons, and the rhythmic scrape of a monk sweeping ash from the stone floor. The fever has not broken. Your wound pulses with heat like a hidden coal beneath the cloth. Now you lie in what passes for a hospital, a wide nave of a repurposed chapel. Its altar still visible beneath a row of drying linens. The ceiling arches high above, ribs of wood blackened with centuries of smoke. Stare at it for too long before realizing it's pus. From draining wounds, boils, abscesses. Left there without cover. You wonder if anyone plans to empty it. You hope not. They were places of rest. Yes, but mostly spiritual rest. The cloth is changed twice a day now, but with little effect. You hear a soft chant from the far side of the room, where a monk reads the final rites to a man whose breathing has gone shallow and irregular. You try to listen, not for comfort, but because the rhythm distracts you. It's Latin, but the cadence is almost musical. You picture each word floating above the man's bed, rising with his last breath. Then the breath stops. The chant ends. The candle is snuffed. A nun gently closes the man's eyes. Another sheet pulled up, another silence left behind. The pus has thickened, and the skin around the edges has started to peel. A new nun tends to you today. She doesn't flinch when she unwraps the bandage. She doesn't recoil at the smell. Her hands are strong, confident. She says she'll apply a drawing salve mixture of lard, garlic, and crushed onion. You nod. You don't care what it is. You care only that it doesn't sting too much. She presses the paste onto the wound. It burns, then cools, then itches. You feel something shift inside the leg, not healing. Not exactly, just motion. The infection responds.
Ow.
For better or worse, a place to prepare for the final passage. Beds were placed side by side so that no one would die alone. But also, no one would recover in peace. The pus is thinner, clearer. The pain is still present, but different, less stabbing, more distant. You're not better, but perhaps you're not worse. A monk nods at you as he passes. That's the most anyone's acknowledged you in a day. He pauses, adjusts your bandage, and mutters a single phrase in Latin. You catch just one word, fortis, strong. You don't feel strong. You feel hollowed out. But the nod lingers in your mind. Perhaps surviving here is strength enough. Perhaps enduring is all the victory you'll get. The theory of miasma, the belief that bad air caused disease, governed everything. They burned herbs, sprinkled vinegar, hung lavender in doorways. It helped the smell. It didn't stop death. You wonder how many of the people here walked in with a small cut, a mild fever, a bruise that deepened. You wonder how many thought they'd leave walking. You wonder if anyone does. Its presence feels deliberate, like a grim offering, a reminder. You look back at your own leg. The new bandage already darkens with seepage. A monk approaches, muttering about imbalance, too much black bile, he says. He touches your wrist, counts something, then frowns and walks away. You ask nothing, they don't explain. You are not here to be healed. You are here to be endured. The difference is subtle but absolute. Every cot is occupied. Men, women, children, some moaning, some already quiet. A nun runs to him, pressing her palm against his forehead, whispering words you can't hear. Another monk brings a cloth soaked in vinegar and covers the boy's face. The boy gags. Someone says it's a curse, or perhaps wind trapped in the blood. No one mentions infection. No one uses that word. They don't know it. Not really. They speak of corrupted humors, of spoiled air, of sins that settle into the bones. The boy stops moving. Just like that. The cloth falls away.
Ay.
His lips are blue. The nun covers him with a sheet that doesn't reach his feet. She crosses herself and walks away. No one else says a word. The air is thick, not just with illness, but with proximity. There is no privacy here, only shared suffering. You can hear your neighbor's breath catch, slow, catch again. Count the moments between coughs. Gives your mind something to do besides panic. The stone walls are damp. The smell is worse. Here sour sweat, feces, boiled grain, mold, and the faint reek of exposed flesh. You try to breathe through your mouth, but the taste is just as bad. The linen wrapped around it is stiff with dried fluid, and it clings when the apprentice peels it away. The smell is sharper now, a mix of vinegar, blood, and something sweetly foul-rotting, perhaps. He says nothing, but his fingers hesitate. That's worse than words. Outside the small smeared window, the light is pale and sickly. The world doesn't feel awake yet, only thinner like breath stretched too far. You try to sit up, but the pain presses you back down. The straw mattress shifts underneath you, whispering softly, as if it too has started to rot. You are no longer in the surgeon's workroom. They moved you 2 nights ago, when your fever climbed past, shivering and into silence. A nun moves between the beds, carrying a wooden bowl of thin porridge. She offers it without words. You nod. Take it. Sip once. It's warm, but tastes like wet ash. Still, it's something. She kneels beside a dying man 3 cots away and dabs his forehead with a rag soaked in wine. Her lips move silently prayer, perhaps or just habit. In this place, nursing is not about recovery. It is about presence. Most of the nuns have no formal training. Their task is not to heal, but to comfort. Their care is spiritual. They speak of sin, repentance, surrender. You overhear one telling a woman that her pain is the body's way of purging the soul, that God is listening. Pain means he is near. The woman does not respond. Her eyes are open, unblinking. You look away. There's a large wooden cross nailed to the back wall, and beneath it, a bowl filled with thick yellow fluid. A young boy across the ward begins convulsing. His limbs jerk, his teeth grind. It's true that medieval hospitals were rarely built to cure. Your own leg festers. Another night falls. You sleep in fragments. Brief, uneasy moments between pain and dreaming. A candle flickers near the altar. Shadows stretch like fingers along the floor. By morning, the salve has drawn something from the wound. The morning light arrives pale and weak, filtered through stained glass smudged with soot and age. You barely notice. The sound is what wakes youth awet. Rhythmic splatter of something falling to the floor. This is more than the usual seepage. This is too much. She calls for the apprentice. He arrives with fresh linen and a flask of wine, muttering to himself. The infection hasn't worsened, but it hasn't retreated either. The salve they applied yesterday cooled the burning, but not the swelling. The flesh remains tender. Your toes twitch, but not well. One doesn't move at all. Just a shallow gasp and stillness. The nuns pull the sheet over his face this time. Sometimes your family owed days of labor for every day you stayed. Nuns kept records who gave what, who still owed. If no family could pay, you were expected to give something else. Your clothing, your tools, or your body for burial practice. No one speaks of that directly. But you've seen how they look at the dead, how quickly their shoes disappear, how quietly their names are forgotten. You try to remember the man beside you. His name was Adric, or maybe Edric. You're not sure anymore. The sheet covers everything, even the memory. The apprentice takes his tools and begins to clean. The cot will be needed by nightfall. There are always more. You move without pain. But when you look down, the ground is red. Each step leaves a print like ink. You stop. The blood is yours. You try to wake. But the dream holds on. You walk anyway, step by step, bleeding and silent. When you finally wake, your leg is cold. The bandage has slipped. The cloth is cleaner than yesterday. A nun must have changed it while you slept. The wound doesn't hurt, but you still can't feel the toe. A boy is already waiting outside, no more than 12, holding his arm in a sling. You don't ask what happened. You don't want to know. The boy watches as they carry the body away. His eyes don't blink. His mouth doesn't move. He walks in when they tell him, lies down, and stares at the ceiling. He doesn't cry. Maybe he knows something you don't. You poke it with a finger. Nothing, not even pressure. The apprentice notices, frowns. He tests it himself, pinches the skin, presses a nail into it. No reaction. You see the look pass between him and the nun. They don't speak, but you understand. Dead flesh. Nerve loss. Maybe not today, but soon. If it spreads, they'll want to cut. And if they cut too late, they'll take more than just the toe. You've seen how that ends. They unwrap the arm carefully. Skin around the stump is dark and glossy, swollen and stretched tight. Not for wounds like yours, but for swellings, fevers, headaches. He sits beside your cot, unwraps your bandage, and examines the wound. He says nothing for a long time. Then softly, still not bone, a relief. But then he adds, 2 days. If it doesn't change, we'll take the toe. Just one, for now. It sounds reasonable. You nod. The toe barely moves anyway. Still, the thought lingers. Once they cut, it begins. First one toe, then two. A foot, then the ankle. You've seen it. Like rot in wood. But you close your eyes and breathe deeply. The air smells of wool, vinegar, and ash. Your body hums with pain and worry, but also a strange stillness. You're still here. That counts for something? The idea was simple. Bad humors must be drained.
Ow.
Blood was the body's balance. Too much of it, and the mind would wander. It's too little, and the skin would pale. The leeches are kept in a jar by the window slow, wriggling shadows in muddy water. The apprentice feeds them chicken blood. Sometimes they escape. A nun found one in a man's ear last week. She said nothing, just plucked it out and kept moving. Here, the grotesque becomes routine. You wonder if it should frighten you, but it doesn't. It just feels inevitable. The wound cauterized days ago has reopened. The apprentice winces. You see it in his jaw. He bites down before speaking. Too soon, he says quietly. He moved too soon. The man tries to speak, but only a whisper escapes. He tries to lie back, but the blood smears across the cot, leaving a wide stain like red ink and water. The nun presses cloth against the wound, but it doesn't slow. You watch the color drain from his lips in real time. You open your eyes slowly. Your cotmate, the man who lost his arm days ago, is awake. They apply it like paste, packing it into the wound while the man groans softly. You turn your face away, but not fast enough to miss the sound it makes, like wet bread torn in half. The bleeding slows, then stops. The nun nods. But you know it's not a cure. It's a delay. He has no strength left. His breath is shallow. His eyes keep closing, but not in sleep. More like surrender. He turns to the wall and stops moving. The nun doesn't pull the sheet over his face. Not yet. They'll wait. Just in case. But everyone in the room knows. You feel it settle in the air like dust final. Faint, undeniable. Another body added to the rhythm of this place. He sits hunched over, rocking slightly, his face ashen and sagging. The stump of his arm leaks. It's not drips. Leaks. Bright red, then darker, then slow. It trails down his elbow and falls in thick drops onto the straw. The cloth wrapped around it is soaked through. You count 3 layers, all red. The blood seeps outward, silent and steady. He doesn't speak, just rocks. His lips are pale. His eyes dart between the floor and his own knees, as if searching for something he's already lost. The nun arrives with a pail and a cloth, but even she looks startled. A second nun arrives with a wooden bowl of crushed nettle and wool. You think of your own wound, less dramatic, less visible, but still humming with risk. You're surprised to learn they sometimes used leeches. The barber surgeon visits that afternoon. He looks exhausted, his apron crusted, his eyes glassy from lack of sleep. The man beside you dies just before sundown. No ceremony. Here's a detail most forget. Medieval hospitals were not free. Some charged in coin, others in service. That night, you dream of walking. Your foot is whole, the sky is blue. The road is dusty and smells of crushed time. The morning air cuts through the open windows like a damp cloth wrung from stone cool. But heavy with the staleness of breath, mildew, and smoke, you lie still on the cot, staring at the beams above, where cobwebs sway faintly in a draft. The leg feels strange, not painful, not better, just foreign, like it belongs to someone else, left behind and sewn on. The surgeon prepares a red-hot iron, shaped like a flattened spoon. You don't feel it enter the wound, but you hear the hiss. The smell is instant. Burnt meat. Almost gag. Almost. The iron is removed. The site is packed with a Savrazan lard, crushed rosemary and bound tightly in 3 layers of linen. The entire process takes less than 10 minutes. You feel lightheaded but not dizzy. You expected something worse. But the truth is quieter. You sit up on your own. The act feels like a triumph. The cot creaks beneath you. The apprentice helps you drink water. It tastes like stone and dust, but it's cool. Refreshing. You thank him. He blinks, surprised. Few patients speak. Fewer still offer kindness. He nods once, then returns to wiping down a splatter-stained bench. Outside the window, the light is fuller now, almost gold. You see a chicken pecking in the yard? Something normal, something clean. You have lost something and it's already forgotten its way back. The knife used on you rests on a stone ledge in the sun, blade glinting faintly. It doesn't look cruel. It's just simple, neutral, like a spoon or a nail. You wonder how many more it will touch today. The cot next to you is now occupied by a woman clutching her abdomen. Her face is pale, lips cracked. The nuns whisper about abscess, swelling blood in the urine. You look away. Not out of fear, out of knowledge. You know what comes next? The tray will be unrolled. The blade will return. The blade always returns. The toe, that stubborn lump of pale skin, has gone silent. He doesn't promise it won't happen again. He only nods and leaves. They understood circulation in crude ways. They knew when to cut and when not to. As if the body is angry, confused by its missing piece. You bite your sleeve and breathe through your nose. A nun brings you a small cloth soaked in a mixture of honey and poppy. Not enough to knock you out, just enough to dull the corners of awareness. You suck it slowly, the bitterness crawling down your throat like ash. You sleep for a time. Not well. You dream of walking in snow, but the prints you leave behind show only for toes. They bleed into the white until the snow turns pink. You keep walking anyway. They recognize death in the skin long before it spread. They also made mistakes, terrible ones. There are stories of men losing limbs for shallow bruises, children bled into unconsciousness, of jaws shattered for abscesses that might have drained on their own. The knowledge passed from master to apprentice was not written, not peer-reviewed. It was muscle memory, luck, guesswork, and instinct. You are now a part of that tradition. A toe removed not with ceremony, but with practiced unsentimental hands. You've been altered, quietly, permanently. The apprentice stays too clean. He wipes the tools with boiled wine and wraps them again. The toy or toey is nowhere to be seen. You wonder if it's been thrown in the same bucket as the amputated arms, legs, fingertips. You imagine a pile somewhere beneath the floorboards. A mound of pieces no one remembers. You lie back and breathe slowly. The pain comes later. When it does, it arrives like a tide, steady, full, deep. You do not cry out. There's no point. The rest of the foot still throbs faintly, but that one segment no longer sends any signal. It doesn't know you. You wiggle the others, watch them twitch. The toe remains still. The surgeon was clear. If it does not change by morning, it must come off. Morning has come. It hasn't changed. The surgeon arrives without speaking. His apron is cleaner than usual, stiff from scrubbing, but the stains still show like faded memories. Just the same stick they've used for others, chewed soft with the marks of too many jaws. You take it between your teeth. The apprentice pours wine over your foot, generous this time, enough to make the cloth below squish. It stings at first, but then the cold sets in. The surgeon doesn't hurry. He doesn't speak. He positions the blade above the knuckle joint. A breath passes. One moment, nothing. The next, pressure. Not pain, not yet, just motion. The blade moves quickly short, sawing motions that chew through skin, tendon, and cartilage in swift, brutal rhythm. You tense. Stick creaks in your mouth, then the pressure stops. You lift something with forceps. You don't look. The apprentice follows, carrying a rolled cloth bundle tied with a strip of sinew. He sets it on a small wooden stool beside the cot and begins to unroll it. One by one, the tools appear. A short-handled knife with a blade like a bird's beak, a small bone saw, a flask of wine, a linen pad, a long hooked needle. The smell of iron fills the air, cold and thin. The surgeon sits beside your foot and removes the bandage slowly. The flesh beneath is dry now, but the color is worse gray-blue, like river mud. He presses the skin. No bounce, no blanch. He nods. It's time. They won't put you to sleep. There's no opium here. No ether. The bleeding is minimal. That surprises you. The apprentice presses a wad of wool to the site and holds it. There's a strange dignity to the surgeon's silence. Doesn't tell you it will heal. Some historians say that medieval surgeons knew more than we give them credit for. The pain peaks by evening. Your foot burns not where the toe was, but all around it. By dawn, the bleeding has stopped. The pain recedes slightly, tucked into the folds of your foot like a hidden ember. Later, you catch a glimpse of the tools being cleaned again. The smell reaches you before her steps, dew-sharp and earthy, not unpleasant, but unmistakable. Garlic, crushed, soaked in wine, steeped with herbs. The nun who enters carries a small wooden bowl in one hand, a folded cloth in the other. Clean, bleached, not reused. That matters. She dabs a second mixture beneath your nose, an ointment of sage and vinegar, meant to ward off bad humors. They rely on readings from ancient texts Hippocrates, Galen, Avicenna. This time she speaks just once. It looks better. Her voice is low, roughened by age, but sure, always garlic. She explains a little. You don't ask. You trust her in a way you didn't expect to trust anyone here. She doesn't promise healing. She observes. Adjusts. A thin scar crosses the arch, pale and raised, but clean. You press the area gently. Responds not with pain, but pressure. The wound is closed. You won't walk easily. Not yet. But you will walk. The nun sees you upright and says you'll want to stretch it soon. Don't let it stiffen. And she hands you a wrapped packet dried herbs, bound in linen. Steep it in hot water. Drink it once at night. You nod, hold it gently. She touches your hand once, then moves on. And no farewell, no ceremony. Just another bed, another wound, another breath to tend. One morning, she smiles faintly and says, no new swelling. That's good. Her fingers press along the edge of the scar. There's firmness in the tissue. You feel the edge of something new. Stability. She applies less paste this time, lighter binding. She nods again. It's almost an approval, as if your body has passed a test it didn't know it was taking. You nod. You almost smile. It's not because the wound is healing it, but because someone said it out loud. That she still does, when she can. A little patch of ground near the gate. Onion, sage, wormwood, comfrey. It's quiet there, she says, and simple. She picks at dawn before the heat wilts the leaves. Drying racks line her quarters. The air always smells like crushed earth and oil. She speaks of it not with pride, but with peace. Imagine her in that garden, hands in the soil, gathering life for the dying. And you think, maybe she saves more than anyone else here. Not loudly, not with iron, but with touch and oil and time. She applies a new poultice, adds dried marigold petals this time, and ties it all in place. The bandage feels secure, clean. You shift your legs slowly and feel no fresh tear. That's progress. The nun doesn't linger. She touches your wrist gently, then moves on. Across the room, a young boy retches into a bucket. A woman calls out in sleep. The nun's bowl is never empty. She carries garlic and hope and never runs out of either. They speak of humors and balance, bile and phlegm, checked whispered, stirred water, pressed cloths to your head. But now, as your wound closes and your color returns, they pass you by. Attention shifts to newer crises. Not quite well, but not dying either. You exist in the middle, forgotten. It's quiet here. Your thoughts return. To many of them, you think of your foot, of balance, of walking, of what's changed. You think of the toe you'll never feel again. It seems small, but the body notices. The body remembers every piece, even the missing ones. But she does not argue with them. She works. Her knowledge is different. Learned not from parchment, but from repetition. From observation. From holding the hands of dying men, of frightened women, of fevered children, too weak to cry. Garlic has saved more than it's failed. Honey keeps wounds from blackening. She's seen it with her own eyes. She doesn't need permission to trust her hands. And so, she moves from bed to bed, applying, binding, watching. She knows who will worsen, who will mend. She always knows. The scent is pungent, almost stinging. You breathe it in anyway. Her methods are old, but not random. Garlic to cleanse, honey to draw, wine to flush. She carries all three at once. And in the corner of her belt, a carved wooden cross. Worn smooth by fingers. You see her touch it briefly before she stands. She does not preach, she does not bless. But the gesture says enough. She believes in something. She's older than most. Here her face weathered, lined like dried parchment, but calm. She doesn't move like the younger sisters, who hurry from bed to bed in nervous flutters. No, she moves slowly, deliberately. her sandals barely making a sound on the stone floor. She nods once, not as greeting, but as confirmation. She has seen you. She knows the wound. She sets the bowl on a stool, unwraps the cloth, and begins her work without a word. Her silence is not indifference. It is focus. The poultice she spreads smells of garlic, honey, and stale, wind-thick, warm, and almost metallic. She scoops it gently with her fingers and presses it onto the healing site where your toe once lived. The flesh has begun to knit.
Ow.
The outer skin is scabbing over, and the heat has lessened. But the area is tender, and the deeper ache remains. You wince. She doesn't stop. She only hums a quiet tune, something without words, circular and low, as if it belongs to the stone walls themselves. You close your eyes and listen. It's the hum, the wet press of the paste, the scrape of wood as she shifts the stool. All of it blends into a rhythm so soft it feels like breath. She binds the wound in linen, thicker than the last. Some of the monks dismiss her remedies as superstition. She returns the next day. Same bowl, same scent, same steady hands. Here's something you didn't expect. Healing feels lonelier than suffering. When you were fevered, people came. The nun's treatments continue for 5 days. Each time she adds a slight variation. One day, chamomile, another dried thyme. She tells you once in passing that she used to farm herbs outside the monastery walls. By the 7th day, you can sit up easily. The foot aches less. The skin is healing. At twilight, when the windows begin to blue with the fading sky, a monk enters the ward, carrying a small jar sealed with wax and twine. He moves slowly, not from age, but from precision. They stretch and resist, clinging together as though reluctant to leave their nest. He explains in few words that the silk is collected from wild webs at dawn, when dew makes them visible. The skin tightens slightly around the healing scar. You resist the urge to touch it. The nun's bandage remains over the spider silk, holding it in place. You close your eyes and focus on this sensation. It's unlike the heat of infection or the bite of pain. It's lighter, like the skin is closing of its own will. The floor is uneven, and your balance shifts oddly without the missing toe. But you adapt. Your leg holds. Your foot does not betray you. The other patients watch quietly. Some nod. One woman smiles faintly. The boy in the sling, still silent after days, presses a small apple into your palm as you pass. You thank him. He doesn't reply, but the gesture is enough. You sit again, breathe, rest. The board supports your foot. The bandage stays clean. You're still healing. But healing, at last, is no longer a rumor. You think of the web again, those thin, near invisible lines strung between beams or branches, trembling at the weight of the air. You walk not in snow or blood, but in tall grass. Your steps leave no trace. The wind presses gently through the stalks, and overhead the sky is wide and pale. You don't limp. You don't tire. You look down and see the silk fine, glistening, trailing behind each step, spun not from spiders, but from the slow, silent work of recovery. You feel no fear. When you wake, the dream lingers, not as longing, but as proof. Something in you remembers movement, remembers light. The silence of the ward now feels less like a tomb and more like a cocoon. The worst has passed. For now. You imagine your own body building something like that now, beneath the silk, reconnecting, binding. Carefully gathered, dried in the dark, used to staunch bleeding, he says. No seepage. The skin underneath is pink and firm. The scar is narrower than before. The nun nods once her version of approval and applies a fresh herbal salve. No garlic this time. Just marigold and vinegar. The monk watches from the doorway, arms folded. He says nothing. But later you see him walking the garden perimeter with a shallow basket. You realize then, he's not a physician, not a healer. He's a collector, a steward of forgotten cures. And somewhere among the thorns and barley, he finds what others overlook. Used to draw out poison, the Greeks believed it cooled fevers. Others say it wards off spirits. He doesn't claim certainty, only the possibility. That's enough. To many, it was an extension of nature's purity, delicate, natural, untouched by fire or blade. Others believed its tensile strength served a real purpose. fine enough to sit against a wound without irritation, absorbent enough to hold salves. Still others claim it was a superstition passed down by midwives and hedge healers, unsupported by evidence. But even now, the scar on your foot seems thinner, calmer, more closed than before. Maybe that's the silk. Maybe it's the garlic. Maybe it's just time. But something held the skin together while no one was watching. That counts for something. He lifts the silk and lays it gently across your scar, smoothing it with the back of his hand. He runs his finger just beside the scar, not touching it directly, just tracing its shape. Clean, he says. No smell.
Oh.
No swelling. You're past it now. You ask about walking? He nods. Carefully, slowly, but yes. Then he sets down a flat board, smoothed at the edges, and shows you how to rest your foot on it while sitting, to keep the muscles from stiffening. You copy him clumsily. The limb feels unfamiliar still, but the motion is returning. The fear doesn't vanish. It clings softly, settling like a whisper. You feel nothing at first, and something faint like cool breath against your skin. His robe sways just above his sandals, and his belt clinks faintly with the weight of iron keys and bundled scrolls. He stops at your cot without speaking, and sets the jar down on the wooden stool beside you. The glass is clouded, but through it, you glimpse the strange contents, soft gray threads wound like tangled hair. It isn't wool. It isn't linen. It's spider silk. The monk nods toward your healing wound. They use this in the East, he says. Now we try it here. Then he untwists the wax seal and opens the jar. The monk uses a carved wooden stick no longer than a quill to tease out the threads. Spider silk was once prized in some regions as a treatment for open wounds. Its delicacy made it ideal for binding without pressure, and its fine threads held herbs better than rougher cloths. It was difficult to collect, tedious, nearly invisible work. And so, it remained rare. Even now, the monk says, only one brother in the entire abbey knows how to find the webs in usable quantity. He walks the fields before the sun, the monk says. Says the spiders speak to him. You don't laugh, neither does the monk. He replaces the jar's lid and slides it into the sleeve of his robe. Rest, he says, and do not scratch. Then he's gone. No blessing, no farewells, just silence and silk. Later that night, as the ward quiets and the distant chapel bell tolls the final hour, your foot begins to tingle not sharply, but steadily. The following morning, the bandage is changed. The silk is removed with care. No blood. Some historians argue whether spider silk was truly effective or merely symbolic. The apprentice visits before sunset. He unwraps the linen gently and tilts your foot to the light. You walk again that night. It's just to the door of the ward and back. Each step feels like a question. You dream again. But this time it's different. At first, it's only a few steps a day and even. Careful, short. You drag a hand along the stone wall for balance, your gait awkward but deliberate. The missing toe shifts everything. Your stance is new now. A quiet negotiation between strength and memory. But you move. And movement, however slow, is freedom. You help the nun gather herbs when your foot allows. A mason with blackened fingertips from frostbite. You recognize the looks in their eyes. Fear, pain, disbelief. You sit by them sometimes, not as healer, not as monk, just as someone who endured. You don't offer advice, you offer presence. And in a place like this, that's enough. But you stand there leaning lightly on a staff, the apprentice carved from a fallen branch. Your balance holds. A breeze moves through the barley fields beyond the wall, and the air smells of dry grass and distant bread. You close your eyes. For the first time in weeks, you think not of wounds, not of blood or salve or pain. You think of walking, not because you must, but because you can. You take one step forward, then stop. It's enough. The nun sees this and begins to ask small favors. Help the boy to sit. Hold the bucket for the woman with the cough. Bring fresh cloth. These are not duties. They are quiet invitations to belong, to remain part of the breathing world, even if just in these slow, sacred gestures. You sit in the shade when it doesn't. The pain is still there, deep in the arch, around the ankle, sometimes along the shin, but it no longer controls you. You've learned how to listen to it. How to obey when needed and resist when allowed. The foot has changed, yes, but so have you. Your pace is slower. Your eyes more careful. You notice things now. The color of thyme flowers, the way beetles lift soil as they pass, the sound of distant sheep bells carried on the wind. These details feel like gifts, small, unwrapped, waiting. The sun spills through the arched doorway of the hospital like poured honey. You stop there each morning, letting it touch your face, your chest, your hands. He doesn't wear the apron now, just plain robes, sleeves rolled. He sits beside you and looks at your foot. You unwrap the bandage. The scar is clean. That the body, when wounded, begins a journey the spirit must follow. Some monks still whisper this in dark corners. They say wounds bring clarity. Pain burns away illusion. You're not sure if that's true. But something in you has shifted. You don't think the same. Don't move the same. You listen differently now to footsteps, to wind, to your own heartbeat. You once thought recovery would feel like returning, but it doesn't. It feels like arriving. As if the person lying in that cot weeks ago was someone else entirely. Someone who feared the blade more than the rot. Who hadn't yet learned what the body can lose and still go on. Pale, sealed, he nods. Not praise, just confirmation. You'll walk, he says. Not fast, not far, but you'll walk. You ask if he thinks the toe could have been saved. He shakes his head. He was already gone before the knife touched it. You believe him. You thank him. He looks away and says, "You didn't scream. That helps." Then he stands and leaves. You watch him go. His shadow, long and quiet, stretches across the garlic bed. The warmth feels earned. Inside, the ward remains cool and sour with illness. Outside, the air smells faintly of ash, thyme, and distant wood smoke. You breathe it in and step forward again. One foot, then the other. You limp toward the light, not gracefully, but fully awake. The courtyard is modest, just a dirt path, a few wooden benches, and a garden wall shadowed with lichen. But to you, it feels vast. You reach the low stone bench beside the herb plot and rest. Behind you, the ward murmurs with its usual rhythm. Coughing, whispering, the soft rattle of metal bowls. Out here, the only sound is birdsong. Distant, high, steady. You close your eyes and listen. Someone walks past with a basket of wet linen. A nun prunes wilted rosemary with a small curved blade. The garlic beds are in bloom-green stalks, thick with white buds. You remember the paste, the salves, the hands that applied them. You look down at your foot. The bandage is clean. No stain. No seepage, just tight healing skin beneath. A monk joins you on the bench. He says nothing at first, only watches the bees hover near the lavender. After a moment, he speaks softly. It's almost harvest season. It's the last good one before winter. You nod. He tells you the garlic will be pulled, dried, hung from the rafters. The marigold petals will be steeped into oil. The wormwood will be crushed and bottled. Nothing is wasted. Everything has purpose. Even the plants that fail are folded back into the soil. Sometimes he says, what survives isn't what we planted. But it grows anyway. You don't reply. You just sit with the words, letting them settle into the air like dust on water. You begin to return to the courtyard each day. Not as patient now, but as visitor. Inside the ward, new patients come. A farmer with a burned hand. A girl with a leg broken clean through. One afternoon, the barber surgeon finds you in the courtyard. There's an old belief that illness is not punishment, but pilgrimage. One morning, you reach the outer gate. Just beyond it lies the village road, dusty, rutted, edged in low stone. You don't cross it yet. At mid-morning, beneath a sky that threatens late summer rain, you find the surgeon seated alone in the cloister garden, sharpening a blade. No apron today, just dark robes, sleeves rolled to the elbow, forearms lined with pale scars and old calluses. He does not look up when you approach. He draws the whetstone down the edge of the short blade again and again, each pass smooth, deliberate. The sound is soft like wet paper torn slowly or a bird dragging its wing across stone. You sit quietly on the bench beside him. He still says nothing. They were men who'd seen enough to know when to cut and when to pray instead. They carried their tools in leather rolls, their knowledge in calloused fingers. Some had served in campaigns, carving arrows from flesh beneath rain-heavy skies. Others had never left their villages, their entire surgical experience a collection of fevers and festering dog bites. There were no licenses, only stories. Successes whispered in taverns. Failures buried without names. The surgeon beside you has lived both. You still limp, but with less strain. The swelling is gone. The scar fades daily. The apprentice nods at you as he boils cloth over a fire. The nun, the one with garlic hands and marigold eyes, presses a cloth to your palm. You've done enough, she says. You nod. Out. You believe her. Outside, the sky bruises into dusk. The surgeon won't say goodbye. That's not his way. But you'll remember the silence. The blade. The honesty. All of it. And when someone asks weeks, months, years from now, what it felt like to almost lose your foot, you'll pause and say simply, I learned. But something else deepens the memory of what you've seen, what you've survived. You don't forget the coughs or the screams or the silence after death. But now, layered atop them, are other memories. The softness of bandages. The hum of a nun's song, the sharp steadiness of the surgeon's hands. It all weaves together as healing often does. Messy, quiet, incomplete, but unmistakably real. You see it in his posture. Not proud, not ashamed, just heavy. The blade catches the light, then disappears again in his shadow. How linen threads are boiled before use, and how often they're still too brittle to hold. His answer comes slowly, as if it costs something to give, because someone must. He leans forward, elbows on his knees, because there's nothing worse than watching a man rot from fear and being unable to help. His voice drops lower, sometimes because I hope to get it right. Just once more. You say nothing. The silence between you deepens, but it no longer feels empty. It feels like acknowledgement. He speaks again. You didn't scream. That matters, you reply. I was too afraid to. He half smiles. I'll scream anyway. Then he stands and brushes the stone dust from his robes. He speaks of cautery irons, and how their weight must be balanced to light, and they skip too heavy and they crush. He opens his satchel and shows you a needle shaped like a hook. For stitching lips shut when the swelling's bad, he says. Keeps the jaw from locking. You stare at it. It gleams dully in the sun. Places it back inside the cloth and ties the satchel shut. Most fear the saw, he says. But it's the needle that breaks them. You do not interrupt his silence. You wait within it. Eventually he stops. He sets the knife aside and wipes the blade with a strip of wool. Inside are herbs, dried comfrey, marigold petals, shaved bark. For the next wound, he says, yours or someone else's. Accept it with both hands. The scent is strong, earthy, bitter, honest. You tuck it into your belt. You thank him. He nods again, then returns to the inner building. He walks slowly, not from age, but from where. You remain on the bench a while longer. The birds have returned. Somewhere nearby, a wheelbarrow squeaks. You press the pouch in your lap and feel, for the first time, that maybe you carry more than just your own recovery now. Maybe you carry responsibility. Then, as if remembering you only now, he speaks. I once cut off 3 fingers from a boy who'd only burned them. His voice is low but not ashamed. Just matter of fact. Didn't wait. Didn't look closely. Was afraid of the rot. He turns the blade over in his hand, inspects the edge. It would have healed. You don't respond. You don't need to. He continues. The hand never worked right again. Couldn't hold a spoon. Couldn't work in the fields. He leans back, eyes on the horizon. Sometimes what we fear does more harm than the thing itself. Then he's quiet again. You've never seen the surgeon speak so plainly. Not in the ward. Not during the procedures. He's always moved with a kind of practiced detachment. Efficient, but unreadable. But here in the garden's hush, away from the bandages and the blood, he speaks in full truths. He tells you how he learned the trade not from books, but from watching other men do what needed doing. On battlefields, barns, in plague houses. There are no lessons, he says, only consequences. He points to your foot. That one went right, but it could have gone wrong. It often does. You glance down at the scar beneath your sandal strap. It itches faintly in the heat. You nod, still here, you say. He looks at you for the first time and nods back. Surgeons of this time did not train in universities. Most belonged to guilds or none at all. barbers with knives, butchers with practice, apprentices to pain. He tells you about the tools next, how he sharpens them with wine-soaked stone. You ask why he does it, why he continues. Before leaving, he offers you something, a small cloth pouch tied with string. The days grow shorter. The sun sets earlier behind the cloister wall, casting long orange shadows through the garden. You walk to the ward one final time. A woman cries softly behind a curtain. A young man prays in Latin near the altar. At the edge of the village, where the path turns sharply between the baker's hut and the chapel wall, you see him again, figure in black. Long robe brushes the ground, stitched from oilcloth that glints faintly when it catches the sun, to trap foul air. To prevent the so-called miasma from slipping into the lungs and corrupting the blood. The days had grown longer, warmer, safer. His job is observation, containment, record-keeping. He watches notes, the coughs, marks the boils, measures the intervals between breath and silence, and when he nods, others act. A home is marked, a body is moved, a burial pit is dug. Carried on a board wrapped in a cloth once white. His limbs are stiff, his mouth still open. You don't look long. The beaked figure walks ahead of the small procession, ledger in hand. 2 monks follow with ash buckets, and that you can hear it coming if you listen long enough. That it speaks in the rustle of trees, the creak of shutters, the flutter of laundry left to dry. Some say the beak-masked doctors are drawn by this sound, that they don't follow the illness, but are summoned by it. Act. That the mask helps them hear it more clearly. You think of this now as you sit beneath the tree in the courtyard. The wind is rising. It hums through the branches, tugs your sleeves, lifts dust from the stones. You close your eyes and wonder what it's saying. The pit has already been dug, somewhere past the fields. You were saved. You were carried from the edge. That is enough. The others will walk their own line now, and some will not return. The surgeon remains. The nun remains. The apprentice watches. The beak-masked shadow moves without slowing. But you will not follow him. You will not become another entry in his ledger. Your story for now pauses at the edge of the page. No family walks with the boy. No bell tolls. The earth receives him in silence. You sit on the bench in the courtyard and press your heel into the warm dirt, trying to remember what it was like to walk without thinking of death. The beak mask holds dried mint and cloves, but no mercy. His ledger, tied to his hip with waxed cord, is heavier than his medicine pouch. He is not a healer. He is an archivist of suffering. Townsfolk whisper that he carries the plague inside him, that he is its herald, its instrument. But he is not death, he is what follows it. But now the shadow walks again, and unease returns like the taste of metal in the mouth. The baker's wife closes her shutters without speaking. She answers simply, "The cough has returned. Dry at first, then wet, then blood. 1 patient, then 3. She tells you they've cleared a back room in the hospital in use since the last visitation. But now she wears gloves and a cloth tied over her mouth. She adds elderflower to your tea. For the lungs, she says. She no longer lingers beside the sickest. She no longer sings. The quiet in the hospital deepens. Doors are kept closed, curtains drawn. The apprentice walks less freely now, his hands red from scrubbing. He avoids your eyes when passing. Even the surgeon seems changed. He sharpens in silence, watches from corners, no longer offers nods or greetings. They all move as if waiting, not for a cure but for the next. She speaks the word gently as if it might summon the thing faster. Visitation, as though illness were a guest. She asks you to stay away, to keep to the courtyard, to rest your foot. She says the surgeon has begun boiling his blades again every morning. That's how they prepare. Not with prayers, not with medicine, but with boiling water, strong wine, fresh graves. These are the rituals of warning. Child drops his toy in the street and runs. Even the monks slow their pace as though uncertain whether to cross paths with the figure. The nun with the garlic hands blesses her brow with oil before entering the sick room. She says nothing, but she sharpens her knives again, re-soaks her linens in vinegar, lights the small, smoke-choked fire in the corner of the hall. These are signs, subtle, quiet, unmistakable. The theory is old, built on ideas of poison vapors and invisible decay. No one speaks of germs. No one yet understands contagion as we do now. But they believe in air, in smell, and the rot of breath itself. The mask is a barrier, a warning, a tool, a costume. For when he walks through the town, people know what he is, even if they never see his face. He is the plague doctor. That he brings no comfort, only knowledge that death has returned. His gloves are tight and dark, and his wide-brimmed hat hangs low, shadowing the upper half of his face. But it's the mask you recognize first, that narrow, stiff beak, curving from the face like a bird frozen mid-screech. He moves slowly, methodically, the way a fire moves through dry wood. You do not greet him. No one does. He doesn't turn, just walks. A shadow with purpose. A reminder that illness still walks among the living. The beaked mask, stuffed with dried herbs and camphor-soaked cloth, was meant to ward off the pestilence. You thought it was over? The fevered season had passed, the wards had emptied, your foot had healed. He does not treat wounds. He does not change bandages. He does not speak to the dying. You ask the nun quietly what's changed. Later that week, you see them move the first body. A boy, no older than 10. The nun still visits the healthy. She still brings broth and poultices. There is an old belief in the hills north of the abbey that the plague is carried by the wind. You do not return to the ward after that. It's not because you are afraid, though you are, but because you understand your place now. They no longer try to save them. Not once the coughing turns red. Not once the swelling comes beneath the arms or between the legs. By that point, the nuns stop bringing broth. The surgeon stops boiling his blades. Even the apprentice walks slower around their cots. These patients are no longer in the ward. The smoke is meant to cleanse the air. They say the scent drives out the bad spirits, or maybe just the stench. The patients lie still in their cots, cloth tied around their faces, eyes closed. You mix rose water with wine, stir in ground cloves, and add a few drops of camphor oil. It smells cool, almost clean. A dying man is given a spoonful between his fits of coughing. He doesn't speak, but he swallows. That is enough. The boy who sleeps there reminds you of your brother. Too thin, eyes wide with the kind of fear that never softens. The nun places a ball of wool soaked in vinegar beside his pillow and ties a strip of mint around his wrist. Your pouch of dried marigold petals given by the nun weeks ago remains tucked in your belt. You crush it gently in your palm. The scent rises faintly, bright, bitter, steady. You stand there a moment longer, eyes closed, hand to your chest. Then you keep walking. The corridor is quiet. The windows are open. Somewhere beyond the garden, a cart creaks toward the fields. Life continues, uneven but certain. The herbs did not save them, but they soften the dying, and that too is a kind of healing. He grips it all night, even while asleep. He does not speak. He sweats constantly, and his skin has turned the color of wax. You bring him a small cloth dipped in rose and hold it out. He doesn't take it, but he doesn't turn away either. You leave it near his hand and step back. That night he moans once in his sleep, then nothing. A younger nun kneels beside his cot and fans his face. She whispers prayers. You can't hear the words. God, oh God. But the rhythm is steady, soothing. She closes his eyes when he finally stops breathing, then dips her fingers in the rose water and draws a small cross on his brow. The herbs do not save, but they carry him gently to the edge. Most are too far gone to speak. Their hands twitch. Their feet cramp. They were acts of ritual, often shaped more by faith and tradition than efficacy, but some of them had merit. Garlic and mustard helped circulation. Sage soothed the gut. Camphor cleared the head. Rue calmed the nerves. They didn't prevent plague. They didn't stop infection, but they softened the hours. They masked the worst of the smells. They gave the dying something to hold on to taste, sent texture when everything else had failed. Even now, centuries later, the air in the death room feels sacred. It's not because miracles happen, but because people stay. One woman coughs constantly now, a deep rattling pulse of sound that seems to shake the walls. The surgeon checks on them, but not to treat, just to count. He marks their names in a book. Sometimes he reads it aloud in the cloister. The herbs don't disappear, but their preparation slows. There is less to do, less to grind, fewer mouths to spoon medicine into. One cot is stripped and left bare, then another. The nun stops tying fresh garlic to the bedposts. The mortar is rinsed and left to dry. A final tincture is poured into the ground behind the chapel. The apprentice wraps unused linen into tight, silent bundles and stores them in a chest. The room remains, but it no longer feels like a place of passage. It is only a room now, filled with scent, with memory, with things you cannot name. Not for mourning, for record, as if keeping the name helps slow the forgetting. They've been moved to the side room, once a storeroom for linens, now scrubbed and emptied. No windows. One door. The smell escapes beneath it anyway. Vinegar, sweat, rot, herbs. Always the herbs. That's what remains when all else has failed. Plants, roots, smokes. The small and steady work of softening what cannot be reversed. You help now, though only at the edges. You gather what they ask for, bundles of dried sage, wild thyme, rosemary sprigs hung upside down from the rafters. The nun hands you pouches of crushed mint and tells you to soak them in warm oil. It will ease the lungs, she says. You don't ask if it will heal. She slices it in long, sharp slivers and tucks it into linen sachets, which she ties to the bedposts. Keeps the air honest, she says. You believe her? Garlic, mustard seed. Ruthie's things fill the dying room now, more than prayers. The herbs are dried and steeped, crushed and burned. The mortar never rests. Pestles, coated with the scent of 5 lifetimes, work their way through leaf and root alike. You help grind marigold petals one morning, and your hands carry the smell for hours. It's sharp. It lingers. It reminds you that, even in death, the body listens. You know better. The point now is not to save, but to soothe. The dying are given cloths soaked in lavender to hold against their noses. They chew licorice root to distract their mouths from tasting blood. They are fanned gently with bundles of dried grass dipped in rosewater. They are touched only with gloves, only by the brave. It isn't medicine, it is grace. Once a day, a monk burns a mixture of sage, frankincense, and wormwood in the center of the room. The nun still carries garlic. They ask you to help prepare a tincture. In medieval practice, these measures were neither cure nor comfort in the modern sense. You keep your distance from the cot by the door. The silence in the dying room grows heavier with each day. The patients become fewer. When you walk past the closed door the next morning, you stop, not to listen, not to enter, just to be still beside it. You return to the herb garden not to work, but to breathe. The chaos is past. The ward is quiet. The dying room emptied. No new coughs. No new deaths. Only the faint scent of ash and thyme left behind in the air, woven into the wood and soil. You walk slowly along the path between the beds, your limp still present but less demanding. No order, just scrub and wild mint. Then came the first sickness, long before your arrival. The monks buried 3 novices in a week. No medicine helped. No prayers changed the ending. So she turned to the dirt, began planting, gathering, testing. She failed often, but some things worked. A paste that drew poison. She looks out across the garden and says, "We don't choose the wound." The earth has been covered, smoothed. A few wooden markers remain bare, uncarved. You carry a small pouch of crushed petals. The nun did not ask you to. She only nodded when you took them. You scattered them one handful at a time, slowly across the dirt. The wind takes some. Others fall gently, landing like moths on the soil. You speak no names. You say no words. But your breath is steady. And when you finish, the wind rises softly and carries the last of the scent away. Only how we tend it. You understand now. The garden is not for beauty. It's not for harvest. It is a record of pain, of kindness, of labor without guarantee. You help her gather what remains, small bundles of sage, curled mint flower heads that might still steep. You do not speak. There is no need. The language here is scent and soil and the soft weight of petals in the hand. You know your place now, not healed, but tending, not untouched, but useful. A flower that cooled fever, poultice that softened swelling. Not miracles, just small mercies. She doesn't call it medicine. She calls it tending. Tend the garden, she says. Tend the living. Tend the dying. It's the same gesture, only different timing. The ground is hard-packed beneath your feet. The rosemary has overgrown, spilling over its borders. Lavender stalks bow gently in the afternoon light. Bees have returned, the ones too bruised to dry, too curled to use. She opens a sack of them gathered over weeks. Crushed marigold, rose, chamomile, mixed with ash. I scatter them, she says, along the burial path. You ask why? She says nothing for a moment, and because it matters what the earth receives, she presses a handful into your palm. It's soft, it's fragrant, dusty. The petals crumble easily under your thumb. You imagine them falling onto fresh graves, caught in the folds of a shroud, pressed into mud by bare feet. The dead do not smell them, but the living do, and that, she says, is the point. They move slowly between the flowers, unhurried, without fear. But the herbalists often women worked without ink or record. Their knowledge passed from hand to hand, mouth to ear, sometimes tested, sometimes feared, sometimes burned, yet the gardens endured, even in plague, even in famine, even in silence. They thrived behind convent walls, beside rivers, outside towns. A few roots saved a limb, a few petals eased a breath. In every herb bed a memory was buried, and sometimes a person. Because when the dying were too many, and the space too little, the garden became the grave, and the flowers grew again. You pause at the edge of the marigolds, the ones the nun always favored. Most are spent now, petals curled, browned at the tips. But even fading, they hold their color, deep orange, bitter gold. It's not gone, just quieter. The nun is there, kneeling in the center of the garden with a shallow basket balanced beside her. She doesn't look up when you arrive. Her hands are dusted in soil and resin, her sleeves damp to the elbow. She moves with the patience of someone who has seen too much and knows not to rush what cannot be hurried. She cuts a stalk of angelica with a curved blade and places it gently in the basket. The roots are strong this season, she says quietly. The suffering deepens them. You nod, unsure what to say. She glances at you, then at your foot. You're walking more, you answer simply. I remember how. She offers the smallest of smiles, then returns to her work. You kneel beside her and begin pulling weeds from around the edges of the thyme. She doesn't stop you. The rhythm settles. Quickly pluck, toss, press the soil again. The garden is not large, but it holds everything they've used to treat, to ease, to endure. You recognize each scent now. You know which leaves numb the mouth, which flowers lift the spirit, which roots draw out infection. You know how they smell when crushed, how they stain the skin, how they simmer into oil or tea. These plants did not cure the plague, but they bore witness to it. They surrounded the dying with something alive, and in that they gave comfort. She tells you the garden was once just a patch of dirt behind the kitchen, no walls. You ask her what she does with the petals that fall. In medieval practice, gardens like this were often overlooked. Monks wrote of surgery, of bleeding, of cautery and dissection. The nun stands slowly, wiping her palms on her apron. That evening, before the bells call the monks to prayer, you walk the outer path where the burial pits were dug weeks ago. The ward feels different now, not empty, but hushed. You hear it in the way the doors open without echo, in the way footsteps soften against the swept stone. There are fewer cots, fewer voices. The air no longer smells of pus and vinegar, but of beeswax and dried herbs. The surgeon has discharged you from his care. The nun no longer changes your bandage. But you sleep here tonight one last night. Not out of need, but something softer, a kind of stillness. Farewell. The apprentice has saved your cot, changed the linens, left a folded blanket at the foot. He nods when he sees you awake, then adjusts the girl's blanket. But you know better now. Healing is memory reshaped. It doesn't erase. It teaches. Your body remembers the knife, the fever, the silence. It remembers the pulse of infection and the moment it stopped. But it also remembers other things, the warmth of broth, the steadiness of a hand, the pressure of bandage pressed with care. These memories layer like linen, one over another, stitched by time. You trace the edge of your foot under the blanket. The skin there is thick, the scar is smooth. You do not flinch. That, more than anything, tells you the worst has passed. He has grown more serious in recent days, less boy, more shadow of the surgeon. Outside, the wind brushes past the walls like a hush spoken by the earth itself. No midnight mass, just silence. Outside, the stars press softly against the sky, their light dulled by the slits in the window. Pale, full, certain. It touches your blanket, warms your shoulder. You sit up slowly, pressing your heel to the floor with care. No sting, just wait. You rise and fold the blanket. The apprentice enters with a basin of water and stops when he sees you dressed. He does not speak, he only nods, then dips a cloth into the basin and carries it to the weaver. The routine continues. Your part in it has ended. You leave the room quietly, walking without a crutch. Your balance holds. The air smells of new bread. The garden waits beyond the courtyard. The gate will open soon. You lie beneath them unknowingly, and the ward lies with you, each sleeper, their own small story wrapped in linen. The girl breathes. The weaver turns. You remain. Not broken, not whole. It's just here. You count the beats of your own heart. Slow, and even now, a rhythm relearned, a rhythm returned. Somewhere far away, a rooster stirs too early. But in this moment, nothing is urgent. Everything is still. The room settles. One of the cots creaks, then quiets. The old man coughs once, but it's shallow, dry, harmless. You close your eyes again. The straw shifts beneath you. You remember nights filled with heat and pain and the taste of metal in your mouth. You remember gripping the edge of this same cot, trying not to scream. Now this stillness. Wait. Breath. Your body remains. Your mind, quieter than it's been in weeks. But you've seen how his hands still shake before he touches a wound. That matters. It means he still feels. He kneels beside the girl and lays a cool cloth on her brow. His movement is practiced now, deliberate. Not flawless, but kind. He doesn't notice you watching. Or if he does, he doesn't show it. When he leaves, the room darkens slightly. One flame less. You lie back down and breathe in the scent of dried mint from the pouch at your bedside. When you sit, the mattress groans familiarly. The straw inside is shifted into your shape over weeks. It cradles you differently than before. You lie back. The ceiling above is the same edge beams crossing like ribs. You know every knot in the wood, every flicker of candlelight that dances across it. You let the rhythm return to your breath. Someone has lit a small candle at each corner of the room. A girl of perhaps 13, with a wrapped leg and a fever that is yet to break. You speak to none of them, but you recognize their silence. You've lived inside it, the weaver murmurs in her sleep, turning occasionally. The girl sweats through her linens. The old man prays beneath his breath. He holds a strip of cloth like a rosary. You close your eyes, not to sleep, but to listen. There are no screams tonight, no rattling coughs, only breath. In this place is a kind of music. You walk in slowly, your stride steadier than before, your balance no longer perfect but functional. You know where to place your weight now. The scar on your foot pulls slightly with each step. Not painful, just present. A reminder that some wounds stay quiet long after they've closed. You're not a patient anymore. Not quite. There are 3 other patients left. One old man, mostly silent, a weaver with bandaged hands. The apprentice passes through with a candle, check in quietly. Some say that healing is just the process of forgetting pain. The candle at the corner of the room flickers as a draft enters through a small gap in the stonework. The flame bends slightly but does not die. There are no clocks here. Time is told by bells. But tonight, they do not ring. No matins. By dawn, the candle has melted to a stub. A new light enters from the window. But it is not soft. It is real. You pass through the courtyard just after sunrise, when the stones are still cool beneath your feet and the herb garden glistens with dew. The sky is pale and cloudless, its color not yet settled. You walk it slowly, eyes open, watching the morning unfold. They are likely already tending to others, dressing new wounds, steeping new poultices, folding fresh linens. The ledger he once carried so carefully now lies closed on some shelf. But his presence lingers in the way people speak more softly. You recognize the spot. You passed it once while being carried, half-conscious, wrapped in linen and sweat. The burning, the fever, but also the fingers that held the cloth steady. the broth ladled with care. The song hummed beside your bed. Healing is not forgetting, it is remembering without flinching. The fear no longer owns your breath, it just shares it. It's quietly, like smoke that fades, but never vanishes. You press your heel to the ground and rise. Even now, centuries later, we still reach for cloth when someone bleeds. Still light candles when we mourn. Still whisper when a room darkens. The names have changed. The masks, the medicines, the maps. But the rituals remain. We still tend. We still remember. And somewhere, even now, someone walks slowly through a garden, gathering petals that will never cure but will always comfort. You move forward not with strength, but with memory. That, too, is a kind of courage. You don't remember who bore your weight? A monk, maybe? Or two nuns. The path still splits near the well. The fields still ripple gold in the wind. Children still carve faces into dry bark. The healer's hut stands quiet. You pass it without stopping. You have no need for herbs tonight. You know their names now. You know how to use them.
Ow.
A neighbor lifts a hand in greeting. Another asks nothing, only nods. Your absence has not been a story, but your return, in its quietness, says more than words could. You step through your own threshold, as if through a memory made solid. The room is just as you left it, dusty, small, intact. You remember the cold? The way the light stung your eyes. Now you sit alone. The silence feels heavier here, but also softer. No coughs. No cries. Just the creak of wood and the shifting of wind against the shutters. You sleep without fever, without fear. You dream not of blood, not of knives, but of hands folding petals into pouches, of silk laid gently over skin, a shadow that watched but did not speak. When you wake, there is no pain, only weight. It's only breath. And a faint trace of mint at the back of your tongue, like memory, disguised as flavor. Upright. Whole. Your foot aches faintly beneath the bandage, but it is yours. You lean back and close your eyes. The wind carries the scent of sage and dust. A small bird lands on the bench beside you, still for a moment, then gone. The silence returns, and you do not fear it. In the way shutters are kept half closed, in the way garlic still hangs above doorways even though the fever has passed, you know better now than to think any danger is ever truly gone. Illness returns, pain returns, but so does breath, so does bread, so does light. For now, that is enough. The apprentice might glance up from his mortar, he might notice your cot empty, but no one will chase after you. In this place, people arrive without warning and leave without ceremony. The wounds determine the story, and yours, for now, has closed. But you carry something with you, not just the scar, not just the memory of pain. You carry the shape of silence, the rhythm of candlelight. It's the weight of hands that touched you not to harm but to hold. A woman sweeps her threshold with short strokes. A boy runs across the dirt lane, chasing a chicken. Farther off, smoke rises from the blacksmith's chimney. It is not a loud mourning. It is not a celebration. But every small noise feels significant proof that the world still turns, even after illness, even after loss. You walk past the bakery, where the scent of warm bread floats toward the alley. The baker nods at you once. You nod back. Ask more is needed. You pause near the gate, resting one hand against the wooden frame, watching the fields beyond ripple in the wind. The same path you once limped down weeks ago now lies open. Familiar, passable. The limp has not left you, it likely never will, but it no longer defines your step. The pain, once your shadow, now walks behind you at a distance. It no longer leads. The gate creaks softly as it swings inward. No one calls after you. No one needs to. You're free to go. The road curves gently past the stone wall and down toward the outer edge of the village. The surgeon does not see you leave, nor does the nun. You think often of the beaked figure, the plague doctor, who walked the town's edge, like a shadow drawn in ink. He has not returned, not in days. You rest at the bend in the road, beneath a tree whose branches curve gently over a worn stone bench. There's an old saying among the nuns, the blood is gone, but the body remembers. It's true. Your body remembers everything. Blade. You return to your village by sundown. It hasn't changed, not much. It's that night. In your own bed, you lie still beneath a blanket that smells of straw and clay. Hey, maybe we haven't changed as much as we think. Thank you for being here. Sweet dreams.